So today, because you guys asked for it, we are ranking the Prince of Darkness, the godfather of heavy metal's discography. So hello everybody and welcome to a new video and welcome to my channel where we talk about everything music from death metal to Queen and everything in between. So yeah, today we're ranking Ozzy Osbourne's discography. All 13 albums, starting at the very bottom with Undercover from 2005, an all covers album. Not a big fan of cover albums. I mean, a lot of bands have done them and they're mostly suck. But in Ozzy's instance, it's even worse because of the fact that, what Ozzy has going for him is not his vocal range or his singing really, but it's his actual charisma and the songwriting and the hooks and the melodies that he can come up with, which obviously are not going to be found in cover songs. So yeah, just looking down the track list, I was like, oh man, this is gonna suck. But I gotta tell you, two of the songs I was actually the most afraid of ended up being my favorites on the album. And those are Go Now by the Moody Blues and 21st Century Schizoid Man by King Crimson, which are two songs I really like by two bands I love, and I was sure that Ozzy was going to just butcher them, but they actually turned out pretty okay. Another song worth mentioning is Sunshine of Your Love by Cream. Everything else, however, pretty forgettable. Alright, for number 12 we have Ordinary Man. And man, I can't believe it took 10 years for them to record this atrocity of an album. I mean, it's got a great production, so it sounds great. I mean, it is 2020 and it is Ozzy Osbourne and a lot of money was put into it. There's a lot of collaborations with cool people and great musicians, and also with Slash and Tom Morello and Post Malone. But it's just not a very cohesive album. It just sounds like a lot of songs just piled in together, and also it sounds very generic, so I'm not gonna waste a lot of time talking about this album. Let's go on to the next. For number 11 we have 2001's Down to Earth, an okay album with some okay songs but very inconsistent. Looking at the track list here, I can tell you nothing too memorable really. I mean, Gets Me Through, it's an okay song, and Dreamer is definitely the standout song on the album, but other than that, pretty forgettable. Next up, for number 10, we have Patient Number 9 from 2020, and I can't believe it's been out that long. I mean, again, great production. It sounded great. I mean, a lot of money was put into it, and a lot of collabs were actually in it too. A lot of great musicians. I mean, too many to name, but just off the top of my head, we had Jeff Beck, Clapton, Tony Iommi, Zakk Wylde, Trujillo, Duff McKagan. Really a plethora of musicians, which resulted in a very eclectic album that makes much more sense than Ordinary Man. The highlights on the album for me are definitely the title track. It's a cool opener, with Jeff Beck playing solo, and a very Ozzy-like bridge, which is a very signature sound for him. Really cool song. It's just a little too long if you ask me. Also, Degradation Rules with Tony Iommi, with that very Sabbath-like feel, and it's always great to have these two together working on a song. Also, One of Those Days with Clapton actually came out really cool. Overall, a cool album. Nothing spectacular, but definitely worth a listen. Up next, for number 9, we have Scream from 2010. Pop metal? Maybe. I mean, it's very commercially oriented. A couple memorable songs and the mandatory Ozzy ballads make this an okay album. My favorite songs on this album, believe it or not, are Let Me Hear You Scream, which actually comes out okay. After all these years, it kind of holds up. I Wanted More, Let It Die, which is the opener to this album, and Life Won't Wait. Cool album. Cool album. Up next, for number 8, we have Black Rain from 2007, and this album is actually better than I remembered it. I mean, it's got great production. It's a little too modern sounding for me. I mean, it's very polished up, very pristine and clean, which is a good thing, but I kind of like the rawness of some of the older albums. But you do get Ozzy Osbourne with some great vocal performances. It does sound a bit poppy at times, but that's kind of the sound that we're going for. My favorite songs on this album are the leading single, I Don't Want to Stop, and The Almighty Dollar is actually kind of cool too. But on this album, you do get too much of Zakk Wylde. He becomes like a one-trick pony on this album, and it gets tiring and boring and old very quickly. Up next, for number 7, an album I actually thought I had, and turns out I don't. So I'm gonna have to fix that quickly. This part goes out to 1988's No Rest for the Wicked. Now from here on out, I actually like and enjoy every album, but listening and talking about all the newer albums, it makes you really appreciate what was going on back then. I mean, these albums felt a lot more dynamic in range and in songwriting. Like for instance, on this album you have cool songs like Miracle Man and Crazy Babies, but the sound quality and the rawness of it just sounds and feels much more analog and thus much more real. You also get songs like Bloodbath in Paradise, which is a very, very different song from everything else on this album. And of course you get the Thrasher Tattoo Dancer, which is a fast song considering everything else that was going on this album. So yeah, a very dynamic album, and I enjoy that. And don't get me wrong, Zakk Wylde was already a repetitive guitar player, but at least it was kind of fresh back then. It was, unexpected. For number 6, we have Osmosis from 1995. Yeah, front-loaded, I know, but that 1-2 punch of Perry Mason and I Want You are awesome. Man, oh man, it puts it way up here just because of those two songs. But there's some other awesome tracks on this album. I actually enjoy this whole thing, I can listen to it, front to back, no problem. But I do understand that it gets a little stale at times. But I definitely recommend that if you haven't listened to this album, be on the lookout for I'll See You on the Other Side, which is a great ballad, and Tomorrow, which has a very over-the-top Ozzy vocal, which is really pushing his limits, and you can tell and you can hear it, and it just sounds awesome. Track number 8, My Little Man, is also a grower. It's one of those songs that the more you listen to it, the more you're gonna like it. And All LA Tonight is a great closer for me. I love this album, and I know a lot of people don't, but this is basically when I started getting into metal. 1995, I was like 9, and I think I heard some of these songs on the radio or something, because I remember being very little and listening to some of these songs. So yeah, maybe it just holds a special spot in me, but cool album. Now for number 5, we have one of Ozzy's top-selling albums of all time, 1991's No More Tears. Return to Form? Maybe. You do get Mr. Tinker Train, which is a really good opener, but you also get No More Tears, Mama I'm Coming Home, which is a great ballady song, I Don't Want to Change the World, Hellraiser, which is also sung by Lemmy in Motorhead, which is awesome, and S.I.N., which is one of my favorite songs on this album. Great stuff. But like most early 90s albums, it kind of fell into that trap of making albums too long, and it feels that way. In case you didn't know, fun fact, when they switched from LPs, vinyl, to CDs, a CD could hold more music. So bands and labels started pumping out longer albums. A vinyl record would typically be about 45 minutes long, but a CD would usually be 55 to 60 minutes long, and some of them over an hour long. Alright, so we made it to the top 4, and I might actually surprise a lot of people here. But for the number 4 spot, I'm gonna go with 1983's Bark at the Moon. An awesome album. And can we give J.K. Lee some props? He had some amazing guitar work on both the Ozzy albums he recorded. On Bark at the Moon, we have, of course, the amazing, awesome title track, Bark at the Moon. But there's a lot of really cool 80s riffage and solos on this album. And on the other album he recorded. Totally underrated guitar player. He had great tone and awesome guitar playing throughout the albums. On this album you get some really cool tracks like You're No Different and Now You See It. Center of Eternity is a really cool fast-paced banger with a really cool chorus, very catchy. But you also get a really nice ballad in So Tired with a great guitar solo, and then Slow Down actually picks it back up. It only lasts 39 minutes and it leaves you wanting more. That's what I really liked about, albums in the 80s. They were just in and out and they rocked you all the way through. Awesome album. Now number 3 is going to surprise a lot of people, but for me, number 3 is going to be 1986's The Ultimate Sin. This one's got a harder master than Bark at the Moon. It's got a lot more low end to the mix, and I just love the opener. It's got a really cool solo. You also get Secret Loser, which is kind of cool. It's fast-paced, it's fun. Never Know Why, Thank God for the Bomb, and Never are actually, pretty solid tracks. You also get Lightning Strikes with great vocals and that awesome dark and moody intro on Killer of Giants. I love that song. Probably my favorite song on the album. And it ends on a high note with Shot in the Dark, which is a very poppy metal song that, is the most famous song on this album. So, yeah, pretty cool stuff. Very, it's hard and heavy, but at the same time it's not too hard. It's very commercially appealing. So, yeah, very different track list on the vinyl. That always throws me off. But yeah, Epic Records. Cool album. Epic indeed. And thus we get to the top 2, and this was the hardest thing to choose because I gotta be honest, I actually flipped them back and forth a couple of times before recording this video, and it was a really hard choice. But for number 2, I'm gonna go with 1981's Diary of a Madman. An amazing album, a great follow-up to the debut album Blizzard of Oz. This album is every bit as epic and ambitious, a definitely more progressive album with a darker and more mystical mood, and better and more complex arrangements and music. A lot of you are gonna tell me that this is the best album they put out, and I would probably agree. I can't really defend this against Blizzard of Oz, or vice versa. I like them both, probably as much as the album. In fact, I probably like this album better than I like Blizzard of Oz. Randy Rhoads' guitar playing on Blizzard was awesome, but this is just off the charts. He took guitar playing to a different level on this album. Here we get some awesome tunes like the opener, Over the Mountain, and Flying High Again, and we also get some of my favorite Randy Rhoads riffing on SATO and Believer. This album has it all. You get a beautiful ballad in Tonight, and oh my god, the Magnus Opus, the title track, Diary of a Madman. Sadly, Randy Rhoads passed away when they were touring for this album. So just imagine the quality of the music we're missing out on. I mean, being only 25 years old, he actually managed to contribute so much to music with really these two albums, which takes me to album number one, 1980's Blizzard of Oz. A truly amazing album. And the reason why I chose this album over this album is the fact that every damn song on this album is just a banger. Whereas this one actually probably peaks a little higher, but also dips a little lower. This is a more consistent album, for me anyway. I mean, out of the 9 songs, all 9 songs are awesome. Here you get the genius of Randy Rhoads on some of the most memorable riffing of all time on songs like I Don't Know and Crazy Train and Suicide Solution. You also get beautiful harmonies and melodies on songs like Goodbye to Romance or D. But you also get some faster killer riffs on songs like Steal Away the Night and No Bone Movies. And of course, Randy puts on a goddamn clinic with some of the best soloing ever on songs like Mr. Crowley and Crazy Train and Goodbye to Romance. And add my favorite song on this album to the track list, Revelation Mother Earth, and this album has it all. From start to finish, all killer, no filler. And that's why by a red hair, this album edges this guy and it takes number 1 for the win. Anyway guys, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please drop me a like if you did. Drop me a comment in the comment section down below and let me know what you think of this list and what's your favorite Ozzy album. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel like a man if you haven't yet. And if you want to help support the channel big time, please consider becoming a patron to the channel. A little goes a long way. We surely do appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Pat out, middle on, dudes.